Hey, what's up YouTube? Let's have a listen to some Jeremy Vine callers. Let's see what Jeremy Vine callers think about what happened at the weekend with the police intervening, because the question they're asking today, and to be fair, I have heard one person on it, but it is a woman called Dominic who's been on Talk Radio and is definitely not a far left woke nutter. But they've got her on today, so it's going to be interesting. So let's have a listen. Let's see who's calling in first.
Speak to Liz from Kent first, who says the vigil should not have gone ahead.
So you think the police were right to break it up, Liz?
I'm afraid I do. First of all, I would like to say that what happened to Sarah was absolutely appalling and there was no excuse for it. However, the law currently stands, mass gatherings are not allowed. So you can't have one rule for one lot of mass gathering and a rule for another. The organisers are well aware what the law states at the moment. None of us like it. We've had to tolerate it for over a year now.
Well said,
so
Liz.
The organisers are to blame. I know they cancelled it in the end, but that wasn't the point. They should have had the common sense to realise that no matter how awful the situation was, it wasn't fair to put the public at risk. And I guess also it's our money, taxpayers' money, which we're short of at the moment, in having to pay for the police to be there. They should have done a doorstep vigil like we've been doing for some time with the nurses.
Good points, Liz.
And carried on like that.
However, Liz, this is a bit different, isn't it, from other protests?
Of course.
Number one.
No, Jeremy, no, it isn't. It's exactly the same. A protest, whatever. Gathering of people. That's what was banned. I didn't see you on your programme defending lockdown protesters. In fact, you were calling, you had guests on there calling them COVIDiots. So carry on, Jeremy.
Because of the identity and profession of the suspect. And number two, because it was largely male police against largely female.
Okay, I'm going to look into this, I guess, to see what the statistics are. But I'm going to guess that there's probably more men employed by the police, maybe. But I guess maybe this is where it's going. Maybe they want an all-female police force now.
Protesters, and the look was not good.
I don't think they should have been there in the first place. The women in the first, they shouldn't have been there.
Thank you, Liz.
I just have
Go on, Liz.
that they put themselves at risk.
Go on, Liz.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much. We'll take more calls after the break.
Oh, dear.
Behave reasonably at the vigil.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Liz didn't say what he wanted to say, so now it's time for an ad break again.
I think the police allowed the BLM protest, so they should allow the vigil to go ahead.
So you think stand off this one, Janet?
Well, I've seen the BLM protests where the police stand off and they allow statues to be ripped down and violence. Nothing the same at the women's vigil. They just went in.
Well, I agree. She is right. The BLM protests were allowed to go ahead. Certain things were allowed to be done there. I think Janet been living in a coma for the last 9 months. Because, or the last 12 months even. I'm trying to think when the first protest started. But is she living in a coma? Because did she not see like old ladies being thrown to the ground? Elderly men being thrown to the ground? Did she not see the little veteran get assaulted by the police for merely standing up for rights and freedoms to not be locked down, basically? I don't see how you can jump from they allowed BLM protests to this, because in between that, Janet, you poor little fast asleep person, what you found is BLM protests were allowed, yes. And as we've been saying for months and months, then anti-lockdown protests were banned. Or you go and look, you see two-tier policing, riot gear turn up to lockdown protests. They turn up with flowers and chocolates at BLM protests, get down on their knees and propose to the protesters.
We had a news story last week where there was a report into policing of big protests, which said the public was sick and tired of seeing the police standing off, and they want them to get stuck in.
I think that's in your little lefty circle, Jeremy, where you're scared of your own shadows and probably want the police to come around and wipe your asses for you. Unfortunately, most of us live in the real world and we've watched the police brutalise and just basically act like thugs towards people who basically just were saying, we don't want to be locked down, we don't agree in lockdowns. But they weren't allowed, but yeah, double standards.
So the police then do that, and now it's gone the other way.
It was women. Granted, there were a few protesters, but it was women, and they went in mob-handed.
Right, and that's the problem for you.
It is, yes, because it was different policing. The BLM was a protest.
Even Janet's struggling here to get her bullshit out. I suggest Janet take a dose of reality and stop focusing on the fact that BLM protests were allowed to go ahead. Why isn't she complaining about lockdown protests not being allowed to go ahead? Maybe she's a lockdown enthusiast.
Yeah.
For Sarah, it was a vigil.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Janet, very much. Storm.
We're going to speak to Zoe from the West Midlands now, who says, of course, police had to intervene.
So what, because you can't have that kind of crowd during a pandemic, Zoe?
Yeah, morning, Jeremy.
Disappointed no one's called in and pointed out the fact that the protesters were most likely or almost entirely infiltrated by Antifa or some other people. And also the fact that this woman that they keep putting the freaking picture up of, this Patsy woman, the redhead, who was George Floyded on the ground or whatever people are trying to say now. Go look at her, yeah. She's an actress. So how many crisis actors involved here, maybe?
Mass gatherings are illegal, okay? They didn't back off when it came to BLM. They were quite heavy-handed, the police. And
no, they weren't, Zoe. They weren't very, very heavy-handed. They took the freaking knee, Zoe.
All the media were on the police's side with the Black Lives Matter protest. In fact, I would have gone one step further with this vigil. Kate should have been arrested because she went to the mass gathering. It's illegal, and she wasn't even wearing a mask.
That's a bloody good point. Arrest Kate Middleton. Arrest Kate Middleton. Let's get behind that one. She attended a mass protest and she didn't wear a mask, and I didn't see her social distancing either. I want her arrested now.
She just vindicates Meghan by just showing up to that vigil in the first place.
What?
Because if Meghan had went, you could have accused her of causing the apocalypse.
Oh,
the police
God.
have a job to do, which is to enforce the law. And there are people that showed up at that vigil / protest because it was a protest where you start chanting. And
Exactly.
saying abusive.
It started off as a vigil, but the people that infiltrated it made it into a mass protest.
Towards the police, it becomes more than a vigil, it becomes a protest.
Thank
they
you.
have every right to say, you're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, we just... Well, you...
Fundamentally, I disagree because everyone has the right to protest. There's no way they should be stopping anyone protesting. Absolutely no way. It's a fundamental right. There's no right for them to take it away. So, yes, I don't agree with the police going in heavy-handed as they did, but I don't agree with the outrage at the moment and the virtue signalling, because this is no different to when that poor old lady was thrown to the ground by the police during lockdown protests. This is no different to when the police need poor Nobby, the little veteran, in the back and ended up putting him in hospital, basically. Brutal. Police have been brutalising people for months and months and months, and now all of a sudden certain people want to get angry. But they want to make it about women. It's not about women, it's about all of us.
Speaking, we had a look at Kate there, just very discreetly going and looking at the site. Sarah?
Very discreetly, but it was always going to be in the national media, and she wasn't wearing a face covering, which made it much more likely that she would be recognised. I think she should have gone, perhaps, but she should have worn a face covering. I think this was to make sure that she was as photogenic as possible. And
Who fucking cares? Who cares, honestly?
I think that sends out completely the wrong message.
Right. Gemma, what do you think? Because a number of people have now called and said, look, it's a rally during a pandemic. The police have to intervene. That's it.
Yeah, what do you think, Gemma, you sour-faced fucker?
Listen, I see their point in one way, but you have to remember also this is quite specific criticism at the Met Police, because there were vigils in other parts of the country for Sarah that passed peacefully, quietly and respectfully with a...
Yeah, maybe they didn't get infiltrated by Antifa people. Maybe. or other people that just wanted to cause trouble and didn't really care about what they were there for. You do realise that happens, don't you?
Very, very light police presence or none at all. London obviously was going to be, Clapham was going to be.
Are we comparing? I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Are we comparing this little local gathering then? I mean, I get the point. No gatherings are legal, but let's put it into perspective. There's what? I'm going to say 50 to 100 people there, maybe, from what we can see in that picture. Yeah, maybe there's a few more somewhere. So let's be generous and say there's 150. Can you compare that to London then, where thousands turned up?
Point where feelings were most raw, if you like, obviously. But as I said at the beginning of all of this, what should have happened was a sensible look at the situation. That's what policing should be. How are we going to serve the people best in this instance?
Okay, so what? They ignore the rules that they've put in place. Again, disclaimer, I don't agree with the rules. Everyone should have the right to peacefully protest. But...
And yes, there's a pandemic, but were people going to show up? Yes. They should have done it in a safe way and cooperated. This is extraordinary.
So one rule for one group, one rule for another, which you've even called out already yourself, Gemma, of certain things. Again, when it fits you, one rule for you, yeah? Oh dear. Jeremy Vine's been taken off the air.
I mean,
Oh, that's a nice picture of him.
And it's caused way more protest. You look at Parliament today, there's thousands
there,
of people,
look.
and that is a worry.
So that one there, there's hardly anyone there. You wanted tons of police there, did you? Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back. Let's just look when that picture comes back on. They're comparing these to London, don't forget. That one with the Clapham Common. Look, I mean, there's a lot of people there. There's hardly anyone there.
And that is a worry. We are in a pandemic.
Where's that one?
If they it right to begin with, it would be over by now.
Just saw pictures of Nottingham, Glasgow, Manchester. They were quieter.
Oh, there you go then.
Really
You've answered your own question.
Dominique, just looking at it
Yay, Dominique.
For the police just to say, oh, we're not going near this one. We're going to find something else to do.
How can they do that, Jeremy?
The difficulty with that, though, is that they'd be attacked anyway for not actually, because it seems as though people want the police to pick and choose.
It does, Dominic, I agree.
What gatherings are illegal. That law shouldn't be there in the first place because people should have the freedom to congregate and protest as they see fit.
Well
I think
said,
it's fair to say that it wasn't just a vigil. It started off as a vigil, and then other people started coming and using it to their own ends. I think
sorry to interrupt her there, but yeah, she's spot on, Dominic. Well said.
Even some of Sarah's friends have said that they wouldn't have attended because of what it was being used for. So I don't think it's fair just to characterise it completely as a vigil. It did turn into a protest, but at the end of the day, you either support the police's powers to intervene in that way, or you don't. I personally don't think those laws should be there in the first place.
No, I agree,
and
Dominic.
Just on the point of Kate wearing a mask, I don't really get that point.
Kate may be
exempt.
exempt.
No evidence to show that COVID spreads outside, so why does she need to wear a mask in the first
I love Dominic. So sensible.
place? I don't really
If
get
it's an area where she didn't know how crowded it was likely to be, and although it's about 19
Sure, Doctor.
times
Sure.
less likely to spread, if you multiply
Sure.
that by hundreds, by thousands of people,
Sure.
the recommendation...
Like Neil Ferguson multiplies things, you mean? Dr. Sarah Jarvis. Dr. Sarah Jarhead, I should say.
From many countries now, and we know that the guidance on masks has changed a lot, is that if you can't socially
I wonder if Dr. Sarah knows about the study that Dr. Fauci did on the Spanish flu, and how he found that a large number of people died due to bacterial pneumonia, which was from the dirty face coverings that they kept breathing in through.
if you're in a packed area. Now, if she'd been standing there and lots of other people had crowded around her, as they were quite likely to do if they thought it was her, then it would have been very
no one
difficult
bothered.
for her to socially distance.
All right. Thank you, Zoe, for your call. And Storm, back to you.
We're going to speak to Nina now from Middlesbrough, who says police are hypocrites.
They shouldn't have cracked down.
Yay! Jeremy's happy. We've got one caller to support us.
Nina.
Hi, Jeremy. I just want to pray for Sarah's family. God bless them. and I pray for peace for them all.
33-year-old Sarah who died, who went
it was a
missing, sorry, on the
vigil.
3rd of the
Yes,
3rd.
when a pandemic should have happened, you can argue that. But, you know, the police are picking and choosing what they're getting involved in. Black Lives Matter protest. I watched the footage on the TV. The police were stood around just monitoring them.
Well done, Nina! Oh, underrated.
In my area where I live, there's gangs of kids hanging about. There's police vans sitting there with police in, doing nothing, watching them. You know, they just seem to be picking and choosing what they're getting involved in.
I understand, Nina. Thank you. Thanks for all your calls on this.
Oh, bloody hell, Nina didn't get long.
Later, should children stop playing with Barbie dolls? After the break, is lockdown easing fast enough?
Oh, God. I guess I can already know Jeremy Vine's answer to that will be the opposite of whatever the sensible answer is, shall we say. Oh, well. There you go. What do you think of that? Feel free to leave a comment. Let's have a chat. Let's see. Who agrees? Were the police heavy-handed? Should the vigil been allowed to go ahead? Was the vigil infiltrated by groups and turned into something more of a protest? Because it seems there's a huge anti-men sentiment growing, which is quite disturbing. There you go. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for putting yourself through the torment of watching Jeremy Vine. But at least you had me swearing a bit and ranting a bit. Anyway, thanks for watching. Peace out.